Well, we have a new trustee now, and so we had a majority before, and we have a supermajority now, so we can conduct business in good shape. We've already approved the minutes, and the next item 4 on our agenda, is the ratification of some claims, and these have been distributed to the trustees previously. With the exception of the last 2, they all relate to TIF projects, and the last 2 are gold projects having to do with Paycom construction, the operation that we approved several months ago. Are there any questions or comments about the claims?
No questions, but I'd like to move approval.
A motion made and second to approve the minutes. Please cast your votes. And how do we get Mr. Lawson there?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, we'll try again. Cast your votes. And it's approved. Thank you very much. It's relatively automatic, Jim. If you don't want to vote for it, let us know. The next item, item 5, are items for individual consideration. Item A is a new project for the City Center Development, LLC, on some apartments at Northeast 2nd and 3rd, Walnut and Oklahoma Avenue. And we have the project manager, director, super developer here.
Yes, sir.
Jim, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Richard McCowan with City Center Development. Thank you for letting me be here today to tell you about Level Urban Apartments. I believe you all have a handout, and we'll run through a few slides here very quickly. Without the support of Oklahoma City and its commitment to downtown housing, this project never would have been possible. City Center Development is redeveloping the entire block between 2nd and 3rd and Walnut and Oklahoma. We, as you look on the first slide, you can see the Deep Deuce Apartments and the Hill to the east. You can see Block 42 to the north, the Brownstones at Maywood Park to the northwest, downtown straight west of us, and Bricktown to the south. We needed to seek TIF funding for our residential community in order to create both an urban building and to meet the needs of the market. When we first look at the site, let me catch my slides up. Which way do I, here we go. Again, here is our site, the complete redevelopment of the entire city block on the second page there. And you can see the brownstones of Maywood Park that have been built to the north, 2nd Street Loft again to the west, and other buildings that have been built, and then future buildings that have been planned. As we began to first look at this site, we seriously examined 3 concepts for parking, parking being the primary concern with a residential community like this, even in an urban setting. The first concept we examined, you see in the upper right-hand side, was to have surface parking surrounding one core building. The second proposal below that is surface parking with a building along the north and a building along the south without any green space. And then the last concept we came up with was certainly not the most cost-effective concept, but it fit the needs of the city and it fit the needs of our residents. And that is to have a 4-story parking garage surrounded by the building pushed out to the edge of the street to create an urban environment, and also to have 2 very meaningful green spaces inside. The cost difference between a parking garage and surface parking is about $3.8 million. A surface parking space costs about $1,200 versus $12,000 per space in a parking garage. Not only did we discover that we must have parking spaces, one parking space per bedroom to be competitive, we also had to make provisions for our retail parking. The first 30 parking spaces inside of our garage and the ground floor are for the public. With those parking spaces, we wouldn't be able to have a restaurant in our building, and we're very close to being able to make some announcements on having a restaurant tenant here on 2nd Street. We're awfully excited about that. In addition, we took another cue from Project 180, and we changed all of the parallel parking along 2nd Street, also along Oklahoma, and along 3rd Street, and took out the parallel parking and exchanged it for 45-degree angle parking, and we nearly doubled the on-street parking, also completely for the public, with that design change. At level, we have a total of 228 apartments. 147 of those are one-bedroom units. 81 of them are two-bed, two-bath, with potentially 309 new residents living downtown in the downtown Bricktown Deep Deuce area. Level has been under construction now for around 10 weeks. We're currently on schedule. The project is slated for a March 1st completion of 2012. Our financing request is $1,250,000. Additionally, we've agreed that no TIF funds would be dispersed until the project is complete, until the new assessed value has been established of a minimum value of $18 million, and that the first year's taxes have been paid. In addition to that, there will be a deed restriction that runs with the land on the minimum assessed value, again, of $18 million. We appreciate all the time and effort the city staff and the approval bodies, such as yourselves, have put into making this happen. And we thank you for your continued leadership to make Oklahoma City one of the most exciting cities in the country today. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Mr. McCowan.
Mr. McCowan, these are rental properties, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And if it's not proprietary information, approximately what's the average rental on the units?
The average rent is right around $1,000 a month. They're completely comparable with all of the other downtown properties that we've been studying and tracking their rental rates.
So they compare then with the Bricktown apartments, the Deep Deuce apartments then?
It's not that it's proprietary. A Deep Deuce apartment is renting today for about $900, $925. Our one beds are going to be very comparable to that.
Good. Are there any questions, other questions? Would you like to say anything about this, Kathy, this particular project?
No, except that, staff has reviewed it and made the recommendation for the TIF allocation, and we think it's a good project and it'll be a good addition to North Bricktown.
And it is backloaded. Yeah, Larry.
Kathy, if you would, Richard went over, just so everybody, make sure everybody gets it, exactly when are the funds spent, and what happens, for example, if between now and the next year, they go out of business?
The funds would not be, the TIF money would not be paid to the developer until after the project is built and they reach an occupancy level. In other words, once the assessed value is created that generates the TIF dollars, then the allocation would be made to the developer. And so that if they were to go out of business in a year or not finish the project or something, they would not receive the allocation of TIF funds from the city.
And the TIF dollars that they receive are not general fund sales tax dollars?
No, this is a capture of the incremental increase in ad valorem taxes that are created by the project.
So it doesn't have anything to do with either sales tax?
It has nothing to do with the sales tax,
or
nothing to do with
bond.
the city's general fund, nothing to do with general obligation bonds. These are ad valorem tax revenues, property tax revenues.
Any additional questions? Yes.
How many square feet of retail?
We have a total of 5,000 square feet of retail space.
And is that in addition to the restaurant facility?
The restaurant is about 2,700 of that, and then we've got another space that we've reserved for an urban grocer.
Good.
Mr. Chairman, just a question to follow up from Rhonda's question. $1,000 per month for a one-bedroom. What is the square footage of that unit?
We have about 15 different sizes. Our smallest one-beds are right around just a slightly larger than 600 square feet.
Okay. And then just, I guess, a word of thanks for your interest in investing in that area and particularly for the pedestrian-friendly development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'd like to move approval, please.
Move approval of the agreement. Have motion made and second. Please cast your votes. And the agreement is approved. Mr. McCown, thank you very much for your presentation.
very
Good luck
much.
on your project.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Moving on, our agenda to item 5B, concurrence with the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust in approving amendment number 1 and change order number 1 to a contract that relates to our Paycom facility. Are there any questions or comments on this particular project? Chair would entertain a motion to concur with the Water Utilities Trust then. Have a motion made and second. Is there any further discussion or questions? Please cast your votes. And we do concur. Thank you. Item 5C is a report on the economic and community development activities and accomplishments by the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce. And Robert, will you make that report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Robin,
My
thank
name
you.
is Robin Roberts-Krieger with the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber, and I have the pleasure today of not giving you the entire report, but Cynthia Reed, our Vice President for Marketing and Communications, will be doing a large part of the program today, as well as Eric Long, who's our research economist. But I'll talk a little bit about the highlights first. Thank you again for your support of our programming. Spring is a very busy time for us. After the holidays, we start kicking off a lot of travel, preparing for ICSC, which is in May, as well as multiple trips tied to aerospace, biosciences, and some of our other targeted industry clusters. So that's a lot of what's been happening, a lot of activity. We've hosted several clients in the last quarter, as well as had quite a few expansions that we were able to talk about. Site visits hosted in Oklahoma City. We hosted 5 different clients in the last quarter, and we also are continuing to see a large jump on our web presence. Again, that's probably tied directly to some of the things Cynthia is going to talk about in our new advertising campaign, but we're also very proud of the new site that we've launched over the last 6 to 9 months, plus the new site we developed when we were recruiting Boeing, a BetterLifeOKC.com, or BetterLivingOKC.com, which has been very successful for us. Materials that are in your packet very quickly, and that's kind of shows a lot of what we've been working on. There's a publication called BioMatters. 5 years later, from our first bioscience strategy, this is really an executive summary. The front part talks about what we've achieved in the economic impact. The back part of the report talks about where we're headed, where we're going, and things we still need to do to be successful in the biosciences. So hopefully you'll find that to be a colorful and simple piece. The actual report is several hundred pages long and great bedside reading if you're interested. We also are going to have put in your packet a document that's a little dated. Unfortunately, it was done at the very first part of this quarter, but it's the economic forecast for Oklahoma City that we did produce in January. We also put in our new aerospace tabloid, which we use with site selectors, corporate executives. It talks about what's happening in the aerospace industry. It's really the most current information. And for the first time, we've actually produced a Central Oklahoma Aerospace Directory. That's for the 10 counties Central Oklahoma region. And it really lists all of the companies that are either directly or indirectly related in the aerospace sector. It will be a piece that will be very helpful for us as we try and network our companies, but also in positioning our companies with potential clients, et cetera. The last piece is called the Regional Commuting Patterns and Workforce Mobility, and Eric's going to touch on that a little bit later in the program. I think you'll find interesting how mobile our Central Oklahoma region is, where people live and where they spend their money and work. Also, with regard to company visits, the Business Retention and Expansion Team, which is fully staffed again, has already made 269 company calls in the 3 quarters year to date, so we're going to exceed that goal easily. And then I also wanted to draw your attention to the public relations efforts. They've actually, year-to-date, pitched over almost 178 national stories. And again, Cynthia's going to talk a little bit more about the marketing efforts, so I'm trying to not steal her thunder. Again, retail has been active. You've heard a lot in the media. Oklahoma is on the radar screen, and Oklahoma City in particular, and so it's a little bit easier today to get folks' attention. than it was a couple of years ago. Instead of trying to get them to take our calls, they're saying, hey, we're coming, don't worry about it. So that's a nice change. And again, you've heard quite a bit of that. We have 6 metric goals that we're trying to achieve for this year, and that's in tab B. And we have met all but one of those already, and that's the job numbers. Again, those are stretch goals. We will exceed 3,000, but we will probably not meet the 6,000 we had hoped to. But other than that, the wages are good and everything else is solid. I can take questions now, or we can take them after Cynthia and Eric do their parts of the report, whatever is your pleasure.
Any questions, comments right now? Okay, Robin,
Okay.
thank you.
Then I will invite Cynthia Reed to come up and talk about our marketing campaign.
Good afternoon. Thank you for letting me come and talk about this program. Oops, I think I just messed something up. Did I do that? I'm sorry. First, before we go into the campaign and the elements of the campaign, I want to cover a little bit of the research that we do to benchmark Oklahoma City's, the perception of Oklahoma City as a market for economic development. We conducted this research first in 2007. We revalidated that research with the same audiences in 2010, and that's really what drove us to create and execute this campaign. That benchmarking research, we compare Oklahoma City with our biggest competitor markets for economic development: Albuquerque, San Antonio, Nashville, San Antonio. I'm sorry, I got switched on the list there. Albuquerque, San Antonio, Kansas City, Nashville, and Indianapolis. The research is conducted with 3 primary audiences: site consultants, senior executives, and then potential employees. This research, we measure the strength of the market. We measure the interest in economic development, the likelihood that they're going to do some projects. It's much more extensive than what I'm showing you here, but I'm going to hit the high points because I think it's really important to see that we've been able to be successful in one of these markets, and we'd like to try and replicate that success with the other audiences. With site consultants, between 2007 and 2010, we absolutely leapfrogged every one of our competitors. We went from being last with this audience to being first with this audience. Now, this is a group we spend a lot of time, attention, and money on, so it's gratifying to see that we've been able to be successful in changing their perception of our market. This is also a group, though, that has much more familiarity with us and is in Oklahoma City more frequently. So visitation is a very important part of changing someone's perception of Oklahoma City, and it's one of the reasons we're so focused on increasing our visitor product and growing that industry here in Oklahoma City. Now, as we look to the next slide, senior management does not share that same opinion. In the verbatim reports that back up this research, our site consultants tell us that the greatest challenge they have with Oklahoma City is that not enough people know about it, and they really want us to be more aggressive in marketing Oklahoma City so that they have an easier time of putting Oklahoma City on a list and getting that project here, because they encounter that same reluctance to come to this market, even though they know we're a better fit and can provide better value to their client. So with senior management, we were last in the 07 survey, and we were last again last year. With the employee market, it was a similar situation. We were even further behind a little bit by percentage with this market than we were with the senior management. You know, some of the questions that we asked them was, why do you think it would be a good idea to relocate to Oklahoma City? Site consultants are very aware of our incentives. They're aware of our quality workforce, our geographic potential, our geographic advantages. They can really list them out just like we had put them on a brochure. Senior managers, cost is just about the only thing that they can come up with. They know that we're in the center of the country. Sometimes that's an advantage, sometimes it's not. But that's really limiting in terms of what they know about our marketplace. Employees had even less that they could talk about. So there are some real advantages for Oklahoma City as a business location, especially as it relates to incentives and value that we bring to a company far beyond just low cost that these senior managers are really just not aware of. This next slide, we're talking about why wouldn't you relocate to Oklahoma City? I think it's interesting to see the differences between the audiences. I think the site selector, that's somewhat impacted by our competitive set, with climate and weather clearly is at the top of all of those lists. We frequently encounter people who don't have, all they know about is our bad weather, they don't know our good weather, so that's something that we need to talk about. But also our educational attainment rates are probably showing up a little bit with the site consultant audience. Senior managers see the world similarly to those site consultants, so they rank the same issues higher. But employees are more concerned about the cultural environment, whether they are going to fit in, whether there's going to be something for them to do, and then our site consultants and senior managers. This slide is one that can give us a little bit of hope, I think. The circled section, this is, the question we asked was, you've been told that you're moving to Oklahoma City tomorrow, and how do you feel about that? The first choice, which is the bars on the left side of the graph, is, I've heard good things about Oklahoma City, let's go. The middle answer is, tell me why and maybe I'll consider it. And then the third section is kind of the, really? Doesn't matter what you say to me, I'm not going. And I think that where we see some hope here in this is that there's much greater receptivity in that middle response. That tell me why and I'll think about it. That's partly due to, I believe, the economy, but it's also, the verbatims tell us there is more familiarity with the things that are happening in Oklahoma City. So the more people understand the market, the greater chance we have that they would consider Oklahoma City as a location. And that's really what we're trying to do. If we're on the list, we want someone to consider us. We don't want them to mark us off, because we know in instance after instance that if we can get them to look at the market and visit Oklahoma City, we have a very good chance of securing that business. So that's the good news slide. The campaign that we have launched is targeted at senior managers, and it is entirely geared towards changing their perception about this market. We're using the Wall Street Journal because it is still the single most important media for reaching senior managers and CEOs. The time that people spend reading the Wall Street Journal still is almost an hour a day. It's really phenomenal. So this is still the best source for us to reach this audience. Our ads began running in March. They began running 3 times a week. We'll drop off to an alternate between 3 times a week and twice a week as the campaign goes on. This is the first ad that ran in the publication. It focuses on our incentives. Again, the messages that are in this campaign really were derived from the information that we learned in this survey. We did pre-test the audience again. We went back out into the field just before these ads began to appear to get a broader sample of our West Coast audience, to see, so we can benchmark their perceptions at the beginning of the campaign with their perceptions of Oklahoma City at the end of the campaign. So this first ad was incentives. Next, we talk about our accolades, some of those lists. Best place to launch a business, #1 for tech job growth, top market to thrive. Those great acclaims that we can make about Oklahoma City that have been validated by third parties. Here's an ad focusing on the best place to launch a business. Another on the NBA. This ad will appear twice. Coincidentally, this was just before the game where we beat the Lakers. And then the second ad will feature Russell Westbrook. Then this is about the state's, the growth in state product. This ad focuses on the lifestyle in Oklahoma City. These ads are really a mix of business climate claims, lifestyle claims, so that and business success claims, so that you get an idea of the total picture of life in Oklahoma City. This next touts our clean air, our growing rowing venues, and again, another way to look at our acclaims and third-party accolades. Top tech job growth, and then our energy. This ad appears 3 different times with 3 different focuses on our largest energy companies, and a 4th ad that touts Continental Resources' decision to locate in Oklahoma City will appear later in the campaign. Okay, all of these ads While they're really designed to change perception, they still have a call to action, and that call to action is to visit greaterokc.tv. It's a new online channel that we've created that right now has more than 950 different videos about Oklahoma City. This is what it looks like. I encourage you all to visit there. It's really a phenomenal resource that's beneficial not just to a business that's considering Oklahoma City, but is great for recruiting talent, for sharing with your friends and family and others what's going on in Oklahoma City. There's a digital magazine. If you look there, it's called Velocity. That will also launch from this same web channel. And Velocity will be a very rich media environment for someone to explore Oklahoma City. We'll do additional editions of this in the future. The first one will launch later this week. As we look through Velocity, for example, when you click on that photograph of that rower, you'll hear from her firsthand about her experience of living in Oklahoma City. All through the magazine, each of the photographs has a video behind it that helps tell the story of Oklahoma City's renaissance from the people who live here and the companies, the people who are running companies that are successful here. It's really a great way to give someone a more interactive and experience with Oklahoma City if they have never been. Again, this next section, this is about living large. This is a pretty lengthy article that talks about the lifestyle here. This is something we'll repeat the concept with all new content each issue. So we talk about value, talk about how you get more for less in this market. There's 60 different pages in this magazine, and as soon as that launches, we will send you a link so you can go out and view that. Last is the online advertising component to this campaign. If you see there in the middle right, that's an animated ad that's displayed on the Wall Street Journal's various websites. We're also on Forbes.com. In addition to this image and perception advertising, we've also launched an online paid search effort that's designed to drive more traffic to our economic development website and capture that percentage of the market that doesn't use a site selector, that's out online looking for information possibly on a relocation. We've seen our traffic to our site double since that campaign started. So we're very excited about what that's doing, and we'll have more tracking information as we continue to execute that effort and fine-tune how we're using that. And that pretty much is the basics. Can I answer any questions?
Are there any questions?
Oh, I should mention that this was paid for by Ford Oklahoma City 3. These were funds that we were able to dedicate to this effort at the close of our 5-year privately funded economic development program.
I do have a question. Thank you for the great overview. I'm curious, from your experience, it appears that employees are hard to budge. Senior managers maybe need tremendous convincing, but I'm hopeful they're both leaning on site selectors. From your experience, what decision points can we help persuade? I mean, where are those decisions being made? Do senior managers take what site selectors say and actually follow that advice, or are they making more of an emotion-based decision later?
It really varies on the project. We've had projects where we've lost it because of that emotion-based decision, but that's why we believe this kind of effort is so important. One of the next phases that we'll go into is a lifestyle PR program, where we're bringing in a PR firm that specializes in lifestyle messages and lifestyle publications to sell the softer side of Oklahoma City, much the way Austin is able to establish their market as someplace that is unique and authentically different. We want to do that same thing for Oklahoma City because we think that's something we have to offer. We want to approach those nixers that might nix a decision even though it's the right thing for a company.
The other thing I would add to that, and Cynthia alluded to it earlier, if we can get the CEO or the decision maker here, we almost always can make it work in our direction. But when we're working through a site selector, sometimes we can't talk to the company. We may not know who they are until we're at the very tail end of the process. It may be that the site selector takes 3 choices to the client, recommends us in the boardroom, but we're not in the boardroom, and we've never been able to get that CEO, senior executive here. And that's frustrating, but that's how the process works sometimes. So again, if we can get them here, it does make a difference. The other component of this is we have an aggressive contract with a firm that's setting appointments for us in California and on the West Coast with companies that are shifting, potentially having some challenges with the business climate on the West Coast. So we have a sales campaign that's backing up this campaign as well.
That's great. Well, I imagine the familiarity with Albuquerque makes sense, but our ranking compared to Indianapolis is troubling. It doesn't make sense, but congratulations on the tremendous progress with site selectors, and I guess on to the rest.
I think it does reflect a real lack of understanding of our market, and that, the survey, when we did that in 10, was taken about this same time last year. We were in the playoffs at that time, and so we really anticipated this halo of all these number one rankings, and the NBA and the playoffs was going to really, we were going to get a much different result than what we received. So it really pointed out the need not to just completely rely on PR as a strategy, that we've got to be out there tooting our horn a little bit more.
And for site selectors, there's about 250, so we can really target them. It's much more difficult to target companies, and employees are basically your general population, so it's so much more difficult to target.
Any other questions? I've got a more mundane question then. Yeah, Larry, I'll save my mundane question for last.
Two non-tied events have happened to me in the last couple of days. One, just traveling back from Knoxville, Tennessee yesterday on an airplane, I happened to get a hold of a USA Today, and it was a huge article about what's going on in Ohio, and where they're spending $1.4 billion to try to beef up their job opportunities. But then I got back here and I happened to get a copy of the Bethany Tribune, and they were looking for skilled machinists, and that's about the third company in the last 2 weeks that I've seen right here that's looking for skilled machinists. There's got to be a lot of skilled machinists around, like up in the Ohio area, because they've got the high unemployment in Michigan. Has there been any thought given to target advertising to get employees to move down here, as apart from just moving companies?
I would tell you that the success rate is very, very low unless the company will relocate that person. Okay. And usually that's not the case unless it's at an executive level, which is frustrating. And I saw the same Ohio article. It was pretty interesting on the lack of success in some other states that have tried that big amount of money.
Thank you.
Robin, on your retail strategy that's outlined in your booklet, you talk at length about the benefits or the need to do more work in South Oklahoma City. Mm-hmm. And I think that's on target. Mm-hmm. When a couple of weeks ago at a city council meeting, we also had some comments by Councilman Kelly about the northeast quadrant of Oklahoma City, and I would urge you not to ignore that need as well.
Yeah, I think the short answer is there are parts of the city that we know are underserved from a retail perspective. Unfortunately, the retailers so often drive where they're going to go based on the demographics they're looking for, but that doesn't mean we're not paying attention to those areas. There are certain retailers that we might have more success with. Kathy, you might want to comment on that, because I know that's been front and center for all of us for a long time.
Yeah, I think that we're all trying to pay a lot of attention to both South Oklahoma City and Northeast Oklahoma City. Demographics do drive the decisions, and finding ways to help retailers change how they make those decisions is sometimes very difficult. If Councilman Ryan and Councilman McAtee remember, when you all participated in a strategic planning workshop several months ago, there were questions about how our retail incentives are structured, because we've kind of taken the position that we'll provide incentives to destination retail, retail that doesn't compete with other retail that may already be in the market, and is that really what we want to be doing? So we have engaged a consultant who's looking at our incentive policies and maybe helping us develop some information and alternatives on how we might want to look at retail incentives in the future. So we'll be bringing that forward to you in the next few months. And one of the reasons we wanted to get them on board was for them to help us when we go to ICSC and when we meet with retailers to talk about Oklahoma City, and maybe they have a little bit different perspective on this than what we've had in the past. This company's used to working with retailers, so I think they know what the companies are looking for, which some of us may not know. But retail's a very difficult thing to incentivize, and sometimes doesn't match up very well with our other priorities of creating primary jobs. So even though it is economic development, it isn't necessarily the kind of economic development that we have typically focused on in the past.
Are there any questions or comments? Robin?
And then I'll have Eric Long talk about some of the great research we've been doing, and also some changes that are going to be happening with some national data that might cause some eyes to get wide in the media tomorrow. So I want to just give you a heads up on some things that are changing.
Thank you. I wanted to bring your attention to the commuter pattern study that's in your packet. You'll see this kind of a dizzy map, and sometimes that requires some explanation. Do you have that included in the packet? No, it's not included in the packet, but it was referenced in the previous presentation, but we can get that to you. The commuter pattern study that we conducted earlier this year, it indicated that 170,000 people commute from within the region. I do see that is in your packet, so that's great. Okay. And it indicates that about 33% of the workforce actually travels to a county outside of where they actually live whenever they go to work. You hear that for Tinker employs people that live in 44 different counties in the state. So this study just brings that to fact. This also shows the payroll that's imported and exported between the different counties within the region. From an economic development standpoint, this has been very valuable in holding our partnership together. So often, whenever we have the surrounding counties pay into a partnership, they want to see the return. And this really goes to show the strength of Oklahoma County and Oklahoma City as the driving economic engine for the region. And Robin mentioned some information that will come about tomorrow for the unemployment rate. It is something that the Oklahoma Employment Securities Commission is transitioning the production of their non-farm employment numbers to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So they're nationalizing the methodology that they're using to estimate unemployment. And so tomorrow you're going to see some changes in our unemployment rate that we anticipate them to be a little bit lower tomorrow than they have been previously, but part of that is due to the change in methodology, and maybe not something that's necessarily happened in our economy. Also, this change, they will go back to 2006 and revise all the unemployment rates for our metro area since 2006. So some of the comparison from month to month or year over year, you're going to maybe see some differences going forward.
It's going to be really complicated for us for a while because everything we do is going to have an asterisk so that we can try and show apples to apples, which will be very difficult.
Will the gross number be larger or smaller than we've been experiencing?
Well, we anticipate for this next month it will be smaller, so our unemployment rate will have improved. But in looking at what they did in going back to early last year, our unemployment rate is now revised to be over 7% in the month of February for last year, and that's something that we had not experienced that previously.
Right.
But the standardization, it's nationally, right?
It is
So all
something
numbers will be subject to the same variable of fluctuation.
In a year, we'll be able to look at good year-to-year data. I think that's the best way to say it.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I do, thank you. I love visually learning here. Help me reconcile. I recognize in each county you've got red is outbound commuters, green is those who are commuting into that county from another county for work. Yet I look at a Payne County where the numbers are almost equal, but the payroll is so drastically different. Can you help me understand how, is it 4,500 people are outbound, so therefore they're arguably importing 169 million in payroll, but inbound is 4,200 and payroll is only 14 million?
What that means is that there's, that may be something that I need to verify. Oklahoma State does skew some of those numbers as far as what's being brought in and what's being brought out, but we can double check on that one.
That's what I was particularly interested in, is people will drive how far for what increased value in the workplace, and are they, to the chairman's question earlier, are they spending money retail within the jurisdiction here before they're commuting home? I'm curious to know kind of the cash effect, I guess, for the commute.
The last research we did showed that for $1 an hour raise, they will drive up to 50 miles for that. Now that's a central Oklahoma, that's not a national standard. We did a what was it called, an underemployed analysis a couple of years ago, and it was roughly $1 an hour that would cause them to drive up to 50 miles because again it was a 50-minute commute. Now with $4 gas, I don't know if that's still the same thing. It wasn't there at that time, but that was basically the number that they were looking at. So.
Well, thank you. I think the 10-county regional partnership is really important. I appreciate all the analysis that goes into it. I was just curious to know the payroll effect.
Retail, it kind of depends on what's in the hometown. If it's not there, they're going to shop before they go home.
Good point. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Any questions? Thank you very much. Robin, thank you for your report. Moving on, the next item is one that we considered briefly 2 weeks ago and then deferred it to give the City Council a chance to look at it some. The agreement has been amended to reflect some of the concerns that were expressed at the City Council meeting. And Wally, you want to go over those amendments briefly so people will have an understanding of what changes were made?
Be glad to. Since the last meeting, city staff members, including our office and the city manager and the city auditor, have met with various council members, and as a result, there's been 6 amendments to the form of the agreement that was brought to you the last time. The first amendment has to do with a strengthening of the understanding that the alliance is not going to be making public policy decisions, that will still remain with this body, the City Council, OCURA, and the other public entities that may contract with the alliance. So we strengthen that point. The next amendment is in Section 4E, and we added a sentence in there concerning reports to make it clear that the periodic reports that will be provided by the alliance to the public bodies will include the financial report, statement itemizing the use or expenditure of all public funds received by the alliance during the current fiscal year. And then Section 12 was completely rewritten to discuss the open records issue, and in essence, we strengthened that the alliance is not going to make public policy decisions, that reemphasize that documents that come into possession of the city employees that we actually take possession of, it'd be either myself or Brent or Curtis or whoever else the city manager may assign to work with the alliance. If we take possession of a document, then that document could be subject to the Open Records Act. And then the other major change has to do with the alliance wanted some protection similar to what occurs with the State Chamber of Commerce, and they're able to protect certain documents. And the alliance doesn't have to make available for public inspection the same documents that the State Chamber doesn't have to, with one exception. And but business plans, feasibility studies, financing proposals, marketing plans, and financial statements and trade secrets submitted by the person or entity asking for economic development assistance, those plans do not have to be released. The same thing for proprietary information. And the Alliance, just like the city and Public Trust can do now, documents that disclose a prospective economic development prospect's location or financial data, that doesn't have to be released, and that's no change from what we're currently doing. It's just addressing it here specifically. And they were just making it clear that if, for any reason, the Open Records Act is amended or interpreted to include other documents, that the Alliance will agree to provide those or make those documents open records. That was those three major changes. And then since last Friday's packet came out, we've continued to meet with the city council members, and I think Mr. Couch met with Councilman McAtee related to his concerns about how we can efficiently measure the efficiency that the Alliance is going to provide. And I think there was an understanding that that's hard to define today. And so we'll put language in the contract that says over the course of time that measurement will be better defined and the public bodies will have a say-so in how it is defined. So we can come back and say it is showing efficiency over what we've currently got. And then there was a question about the audit language that was in the contract. The prior version gave the Alliance discretion in determining what documents they would make available, but it had to be a reasonable determination. They just couldn't say, we're not giving you anything. It has to be reasonable. Well, that didn't flow very well with all the council members, so there was a change to make it, we get to determine what that is, but our request will have to be reasonable. So, but we get to determine what that is. And then Councilman Kelly, Mr. Jordan and I met with Councilman Kelly late yesterday, and I attempted to make changes to the scope of work to address his concerns. The language that's in here is not as strong as he would have liked, but it's what we could mutually agree to between the parties. And that is to provide recommendations and consultations to address the leakage of retail and other commercial business, and to address the advancement of commercial and retail economic development opportunities in the northeast and southern portions of the city. And I think the City Council was unanimous in approving all of the amendments to the contract this morning.
And Wally, one of the concerns that was expressed by the City Council a couple of weeks ago was the diversity of the board. And could you then comment on the additional directors that have been nominated to the board?
You might be better addressing that.
I can address that if you want me to.
Your future employers.
I guess. One of the questions that did come up at the council meeting was the makeup of the board of directors of the Alliance. And since that meeting 2 weeks ago, the Alliance has decided to add 4 new board members and make one change. Debbie Hampton, who is now the president and CEO of the United Way, has been added to the board, and she will take an at-large position that was held by Meg Salyer. Tony Tyler, who is a South Oklahoma City business person, has been active in the South Oklahoma City Chamber. Mount St. Mary's High School is the owner of Tyler Media, has been added to the board. Christopher Turner, who is the president of First State Bank and a lifetime member of the Urban League of Greater Oklahoma City, has been added to the board. Michael Brooks Jimenez, who is an attorney with a bilingual law practice in South Oklahoma City, has been added to the board, and James Talbert, who owns Full Circle Bookstore and has been a member of the Urban Renewal Authority for many years and active in the Arts Council, and chaired the Mid-America Arts Alliance and the Oklahoma Humanities Council, and several other things, has been added to the board as well. So I think that those changes help to address some of the concerns about diversity and membership on the board of directors.
I might point out that Meg Salyer has resigned her position.
Right. She stepped
no longer
down.
on the board. Are there any questions or comments on the amendments that we've been briefed on this afternoon? I guess parliamentary procedure would have us vote on the amendments first. Okay. The chair would entertain a motion to approve the amendments as presented to us. Second. Motion made. Is there any further discussion or questions? Please cast your votes, and the amendments are approved. And now we have to approve the contract itself. Are there any questions or comments on the contract? I apologize to Trustee Rolfe. You've not had it as long as some of us have. Well, very good. You had a good leader there at that point. Are there comments or questions on the agreement as was presented to you previously, taking into consideration it has been amended to reflect some of the concerns that the City Council had 2 weeks ago?
No questions, but would like to move approval.
A motion for approval? A motion made and second. Are there any further discussion, comments? Please cast your votes. And the agreement is approved. Thank you very much. And Wiley, thank you for your explanation. Next item on the agenda is the General Manager report. Brett, you want to say some things about it? Because it is slightly different than we've had before.
Yes, sir. I wanted to, I wanted to draw your attention to page 2. This is the project scorecard that we discuss periodically regarding our GOLT fund, or our strategic investment program. Historically, we've had Integra Wind Services, which, along with the Quality Tubular Services Oklahoma companies, included on this project in the scorecard, and we have deleted those from that. The Integra ceased operations in December of this past year, and Quality Tubular Services sold their property and are not considering doing business in Oklahoma City right now. I want to stress that we have spent zero GOLT funds on this project, so we're not out any money on that. I have added the 3 projects that we're currently negotiating: Blue Cross Blue Shield, the Boeing Company for their C-130 program, and the Chesapeake Energy project. To date, that's 2,600 jobs with $13.5 million of GOLT that's allocated to that, for an estimated $129 million payroll and $105 million investment. So I will tell you that in the near future we're working on those 3 agreements, and will be bringing back another economic development agreement with another developer that's going to bring 139 residential units just northwest of the one that you voted on today. So we have a lot of projects going on right now. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, Larry.
Brent, give everybody an idea of the geographic location of those 3 that you're working on right now. Where will they go? Boeing, Chesapeake, and Blue Cross Blue Shield. And then the pipe company, where do they own their land before they went away?
Okay. The Blue Cross Blue Shield will be located at their site up off of the Hefner Parkway in 63rd. The Chesapeake was up on Northwestern and 63rd area. Boeing will be out by Tinker Air Force Base, 59th, Southeast 59th. The one that you were talking about related to, what was
the pipe company?
The pipe company was out off of I-240 southeast in southeast Oklahoma City.
So there was pretty good geographic dispersion there, wasn't there?
Yes, sir.
And several of us were fortunate to participate in groundbreaking at Boeing this morning for their new plant, and I was really proud of our operation here. We had 550 new jobs moving in here from Boeing at an average salary of, over $100,000. So it's really a significant group of people coming in. And I took some personal pleasure in commenting on the fact that they were coming from Southern California to Oklahoma City. And they had options. They had the Boeing company had some really good options, and so we won that one hard. And Rob, thank you very much for all the work you did on it, and Brent as well. Are there any comments or questions about the report? This is a fairly lengthy list, I know, Brent, but it might be interesting to pick 2 or 3 or 4 a meeting and give us a brief update as to where they stand and a little bit more than just dollars here across the board.
Okay. If you'd like, at our next meeting, we'll give you a list of, would that be okay, or?
Yeah, that'd be fine. I just, like I say, it just could be 1 or 2 sentences on what their status is, how
Okay.
many employees they have working or are under construction.
We can do that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the manager's report? Are there any comments from the staff? Welcome our new trustee. We look forward to having you on board. Comments from the citizens? Any comments from the staff? Jim?
Yeah, just a word of thank you for the welcome, and to Rhonda and Frank and everyone here that I've worked with in the past and look forward to working to in the future. Snitzer knows that some things don't change. I'm still to the left of my friend Larry. I'm sure he doesn't mind that, but it's great to see you all, and thank you. And I know where we meet, and I won't be late.
Thank you very much, Jim. Hearing no other comments, we are adjourned.